Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Sports Medicine Update, a weekly podcast with yours truly, Jerry Riles, and the Honorable Dr. Chad Prodromos. Dr. Chad Prodromos is an orthopedic surgeon at Illinois Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Centers here in the great city of Chicago, the Glenview area, and, of course, Naples, an orthopedic surgeon at Prodromos Stem Cell Institute. He's the editor-in-chief of the Anterior Cruciate Ligament Reconstruction and Basic Science. Dr. Chad Prodromos, great to talk with you and to see you again, and looking forward to trying to get through this snow and cold. Welcome back, my good friend. How are you?
Thank you very much. Trying to stay warm like you. How you doing?
Hey, we're hanging in there, and the Groundhogs had 6 more weeks of this stuff, but who knows? Let's just get through it. But at least we have sports to rely on, and a lot of things are going on. Baseball is reported to spring training, of course, in their respective areas, that, of course, in Arizona and down in Florida. Basketball is getting close to March Madness as far as the collegiate level is concerned. Football has wrapped things up, but, we know that's a 24/7 sport that's year-round. So there's always news and excitement going on in the world of football. And basketball, the NBA. Our Bulls are, they're going up and down. They're hanging in there under new coach Billy Donovan. But we know that there are some injuries around the league, and more notable, the Brooklyn Nets with Kevin Durant, who we know set out an entire year after injuries to his Achilles, and now he's suffering some hamstring issues, so he's missing some few games with the Brooklyn Nets. But the defending champion, the world champions, the Los Angeles Lakers, led by LeBron James and his Robin of sorts in the Batman and Robin duo, AD, Anthony Davis, is out. He's down. He's suffered an injury, and it's kind of questionable what's going to happen with the Los Angeles Lakers long term. But if you can share with the viewing audience on the podcast your thoughts on the injury to AD and what it means to his immediate future and his long-term future.
Yeah, and as I always say in cases like this, I don't have any inside information. The only thing that I know is what I, read online in the paper. And but I did read where he has a Achilles tendon problem, they said, and I read in one place that they said that he has some swelling in the tendon. Mm-hmm. So, the Achilles tendon used to be thought to be the absolute kiss of death, and people didn't come back from it. Actually, KD as opposed to AD is maybe changing that narrative a little bit. Boogie Cousins too, So because he seems to have come back from his Achilles, KD, and so it isn't necessarily the end of a career as it used to be. But it's a devastating injury, and there's Klay Thompson out there now with it too, and it takes a long time to come back. We release people at 6 months, but not to play in the NBA at 6 months. It's going to be more in the vicinity of a year, maybe more. But here's the thing: it's a funny injury, and a lot of them that come without warning. Now, I don't know. I'm not privy with Klay Thompson, for example, whether he had soreness before or not. At least it wasn't reported. I'm taking care of one professional athlete, at this point, who I won't say anything more than that, but had that problem, but didn't really want it out there for public or even team consumption, little soreness. The thing of it is, though, that the soreness can presage a rupture, but what happens with tendons in general, and the Achilles is an easy one to evaluate because it's very superficial. You can put your fingers on it in examination. You cannot do that, for example, with the rotator cuff tendons. But it can just get to be sore and be of normal thickness and normal consistency and normal structure, but be kind of sore. And even then, it can predispose to rupture. But what the Achilles tendon will often do with repetitive micro trauma over time is it'll thicken. And what happens is some of the tissue in the inside of the tendon gets damaged, and then the body attempts to heal it, and it lays down new tendon tissue, but also some scar tissue. So when the body heals a tendon that's damaged a little, it doesn't heal it with tissue that's quite as efficient as the original tendon. Tendon tissue, native tendon tissue, is parallel fibers of collagen with cells in it. It's oriented perpendicular to the lines of stress, so it's a fairly lean structure that has a lot of strength. But when it gets microtrauma over time, it thickens. So when we're examining people with an Achilles tendon, whether they're athletes or just regular folks, we can see, so is it thickened or isn't it? When it gets to the point where it's thickened, you're at definite significant risk to rupture it. And, even if you have chronic or intermittent pain without thickening, you're at some risk. But when it gets thickened, the risk is greater. Now, with regular folks, I'll talk to people, working men and women, and say, well, you're at some risk to rupture. You just have to be careful how you use it and just be a little careful. And then the risk is less, but it's still there. But, when you're a professional athlete, and especially a professional basketball player, wow, there's just no good way. You can try a little to be a little, play a little less above the rim, I suppose. But boy, how do you play basketball without stopping and starting and running and jumping, at a high level? So I worry, and maybe his tendon isn't swollen, maybe this account is wrong. I hope it's wrong. But if it is swollen, Anthony Davis's that is, right, then it would indicate that maybe there is some micro trauma, and it just would put him at a little greater risk of rupture. I think the team did a very smart thing. I read that they're keeping him down for a month. It usually doesn't take a month to get rid of soreness, so I think they're probably going to take some time to get rid of soreness and then take longer time than that just to give it time to heal. And so I think that's a really smart thing to do, to give it plenty of time. However, once the tendon gets to the point where it's thickened and it has this micro trauma to it, there's probably permanent risk of rupture that you probably cannot get rid of. We inject Achilles tendons like this, and I did with this one professional athlete with PRP, platelet-rich plasma. And PRP helps tendons to heal. We do a lot of work with rotator cuffs with that, for example. Probably better would be stem cell treatment, but there's various logistical reasons why that's hard. But even then, I don't know that you can ever get the tendon back to the way that it used to be.
Really? That's kind of interesting, because isn't it when Kevin Durant went down with his injury with the Golden State Warriors, coming out of the Warriors camp and organization, and his camp as well, was that it wasn't a ruptured Achilles. Although it appeared on camera because he tore it during a game, or he injured it during a game, and he reacted, and you can help me out with this, Doc, but he responded and reacted, when it happened. And it's described as like you feel like someone just like kicked you in the back of your leg, and he reacted that way. But his camp said no, it wasn't a ruptured Achilles or whatever. But of course we know now what unfolded there. First, describe and explain why does it feel like someone suddenly just kicked you when you tear your Achilles?
Yeah, I'll explain that. Regarding Kevin Durant, at least what was written, I think it was a ruptured Achilles, but what happened there, and I think we discussed this possibly a few weeks ago, is that he had pain, as I understood it or read about it, in what's called the gastrocnemius. So it's the Achilles tendon goes up your leg to the fleshy part of your calf, and you can get soreness there as well. So it appeared that he had soreness there, and that's kind of a different. It's continuous with the Achilles tendon, but it's a different place from it. And so I just don't think anybody thought it was Achilles. And I think I don't think any mistakes were made. I mean, I wouldn't have thought it was in the Achilles either if it was up in the calf. And we see plenty of people with pain up there, and it's, the Achilles doesn't go. But it's kind of a learning experience for all of us in this field, I guess, that a person had pain sort of higher up in the calf, but their Achilles ruptured. So just to know that those things can go together, whether it's coincidence or not, I'm not sure. As far as why people feel that they're kicked, when the tendon ruptures, it's a traumatic event. And so you basically feel pain where the tendon is. When the Achilles tendon ruptures, it's a traumatic event, and you feel pain when it ruptures. And so feeling pain in the back of your ankle, it kind of feels like somebody kicked you or something traumatic happened. So people usually say they look behind them, see who kicked them, nobody did. And then they realize that you can walk, but you can't walk well, and you certainly can't run. And then they kind of realize that they're not moving too well. And then, and that's the rest of it. So that's characteristically what happens.
Okay. Hey, Doc, let me ask you this. Thank you so very much for clearing that up for some of those who may not be familiar with it. But, some people understand that with professional athletes and injuries, they happen. It's part of their livelihood, and it's almost inevitable that you're going to sustain some type of injury. But as far as the Achilles is concerned, the average guy who's a weekend warrior, or who's a weekend golfer or tennis player, rollerblading, whatever the case may be. For instance, I had a friend who played a lot of tennis, and he ended up rupturing both of his Achilles at the same time. And he was I believe he was in a cast. Both legs are in a cast.
Oh my God.
And his rehabilitation was a year-long process. And I can vividly remember once he got the cast off and he was starting the rehab. He was a reporter here in the city of Chicago, and he would walk, the best that he could from the parking lot to the sporting venue, and he looked like he was probably maybe in his late 40s, early 50s at best. But he walked like he was a 80-something-year-old man or 90-year-old something man that needed a walker to get from point A to point B. What causes the rupture? Because people will look at professional athletes and say, well, the wear and tear, the stress, the pounding, consistent, high level of performance, it eventually is going to break this thing down, as opposed to a weekend warrior or someone who's just trying to stay in shape, have this experience. Tell us the difference between it, or if there are any differences as far as the injury.
Yeah, I'll tell you an interesting thing about that. So in my career, I fixed a number of these, and first of all, they've all been in males. It can occur in females, but it's very unusual. And there may be an exception or two, but I ask every patient what they had done before. Most of them are active in one way or another, but I do believe that every patient that I've ever fixed told me that they used to do toe races. It's like weightlifting, right? Where you go up on your toes and put weights on your shoulders, or different ways to do it. And so the thing that happens in general is that when you strengthen yourself, you strengthen the muscle, but the tendon is in continuity with the muscle. So you're stressing two things. You're stressing the muscle, you're stressing the tendon. Mm-hmm. The muscle can get bigger and stronger. The tendon can get a little thicker, but not much happens to the tendon. But what does happen is it's kind of a reverse thing. So strengthening the muscle can make the muscle stronger, but the strengthening of the muscle puts stress on the tendon, and doing a lot of that can actually damage the tendon in adulthood past the point. So I think many of the people I've done are heavy, not all of them. I did one guy I remember who was one of the youngest I've ever done, who wound up playing in the NFL actually as a defensive back. When he did it, he was in college, and so pretty young, I was surprised, but had done a lot and he was a fabulous athlete, man among boys, but he done a lot of toe races. So I'm not a big fan I'm not a big fan of lower body weightlifting in general, because I think it can correlate with, and it's going a little against the grain. I know there's a lot done now with stretching and strengthening, but I think your legs get enough exercise just living, and I prefer to use them functionally, ellipticals, bikes, that kind of thing. But when I see a lot of people that I see that have issues, like I said, with the tendon Achilles, I think all of them had been doing toe raises to try to strengthen the calf. And I see people with hamstring strains, an awful lot of them doing leg curls and hamstring strengthening. So here's the thing about the Achilles. That lever arm that puts your foot down, like pointing your toe, which is what the Achilles does, is the strongest one in the body, or one of the very strongest ones in the body. So you have just tremendous leverage naturally. And I don't know that there's much upside to making it even stronger. I think it tends to get done a lot more in down linemen who just want bulk and size, and so maybe that's useful. But my point is, though, that I don't think it needs a whole lot of strengthening because it's so strong already, and I don't think that strengthening it does anything regarding speed, which is more a function of fast twitch muscle fibers and whatnot. So I think in general, the weekend warriors, young weekend warriors, Achilles tendon ruptures are pretty unusual. I had a friend, actually another doctor, who ruptured his, and he was youngish at the time, maybe 40, but he was 5'10", but he could slam dunk, so he had great hops, and so people that do generate even more torque. So I would say this. I mean, a couple of things. Number one, if it hurts, leave it the heck alone. There are many people who advocate doing, it's called eccentric stretching of it. I did that years ago and didn't find it to help, and it kind of worries me to be taking something that's injured and stretching it in a way that's painful. But anyway, it's a function of it's just a function of repetitive stress. And these NBA guys are they're running around, jumping all the time. I don't know if there's a correlation. You put more torque on a tendon, the more fast twitch muscle fibers you have. So someone with a higher vertical leap will put more torque on the tendon, and in theory, that would damage it more. I don't know if there's a correlation. I think I looked it up that Klay Thompson, for example, I think I read his vertical leap was 28 inches, which heck of a lot more than I can jump, but it's not the real leapers in the league are high 30s or more. I think Zach LaVine was 42 or 4. Michael Jordan had the biggest one ever recorded, which is either 46 or 48 inches. But anyway, but 28 is not a lot. So my point is, if I've got that right, it isn't that he had a terrific vertical leap with terrific torque on the tendon and ruptured. I think it's some of it's a little genetic, but it's just a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah, I would think genetics played a big role in it as well, because you talk about Michael Jordan and the pounding that his body sustained and what he put it through. He never saw injuries throughout pretty much the course of his career. So I truly believe genetics plays an important role in that. But you mentioned something earlier, Doc, that you see more male cases than you do female cases. Why is that?
That's a good question. So in my case, I believe it's 100%. I'm sure I've never done a female. I know they exist, so I don't think it's 100%, but I think studies on it, it's very high. Why is it? That's a good question, because if it were decades ago, you could argue that jumping sports tend to do it more like basketball, maybe more like football. I don't think you see it so much in baseball, for example. And there was a time, of course, when the ladies weren't doing that much. But gee whiz, now they are. And so I'm not sure that I know. In general, I think the men are creating greater torque because they're stronger than ladies. But on the other hand, their tendons are also bigger. So I don't think I know why.
Could it be women have a lower center of gravity compared to men, and so therefore they have a better balance, and their bodies are just in tune to take the rigors of the everyday pounding or stretching and things of that sort. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah, I
Picking up
don't know.
straws.
Yeah, I don't know either. And actually, there have been studies done on females who jump. They've been done in the context of ACLs. And when ladies hit adolescence, on average, when they land, they don't go into as much of a crouch as men do. So men land and they go down more. So that's actually it kind of gets complicated, but that's thought to maybe be protective of the ACL. A lot of biomechanics I won't get into, but getting into more of a crouch, sort of a more gradual deceleration on landing, you would think if anything would protect the Achilles tendon, which is what men do, yet they rupture it more. So now, I'll tell you something else. In ACLs, so we published what I think is the seminal paper on the subject, looking at the fact that ladies get a lot more ACL tears than men. I've mentioned that before, and in our paper is about 3.5 times as many. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of controversy as to why that is as well. But there's a case. So that's a ligament, the ACL. It's the Achilles is a tendon, so they're not the same, but they're similar structurally. And so there's a case where ladies clearly rupture the structure more often than males. So why is it males rupture their Achilles more than female? I don't know. I mean, there's probably still an argument to be made that there are more men playing basketball, more leagues, more teams, maybe than women. And, does it involve that maybe more men are doing weightlifting for their ankle than women? But I just don't know.
Hey, Doc, let me ask you this question. You talked about the ACL, and over the years, we can go back into the 60s. We know with the great late Gale Sayers, his knee injuries. We know in the 70s, NBA players who sustained injuries. I know the great Bernard King was a phenomenal basketball player, but he tore his ACL, and his career was never the same. But we fast forward today, and we see that athletes sustain these injuries. I can remember Willis McGahee with the Miami Hurricanes back in the early 2000s had his knee busted up in a national championship game, and I clearly thought that his career was over with. But with the evolution of medicine and technology, this guy was able to come back and play a pretty productive NFL career, which is surprising and shocking to me. With the improvement of science and medicine and technology, do you see the Achilles procedure evolving to a point where it doesn't require an athlete to sit out basically a year of their life or their career to get back to up to speed, compared to how the ACL once was and now it is today? Do you see some type of direction as far as the Achilles growth and development?
Well, I'll tell you, the ACL was a complicated biomechanical thing to figure out how to fix it. I think with the Achilles, so I tell you what I think is going to happen. I think what I call orthobiologics, so platelet-rich plasma stem cells. I think that these tissues are going to be made to heal quicker using those kinds of things. This gets very tricky. Research is early. The FDA won't let us do a lot of these treatments. They'll let us do PRP, but stem cell treatments we can do are quite limited. Yeah, I think there are things to be done to heal more quickly. It's interesting. Wendell Carter Jr., the Bulls center, got what was listed as a quadriceps contusion. And the paper said that he was going to be re-evaluated in 4 weeks. But lo and behold, I don't know the exact timing, but 2.5, 3 weeks after the injury, he went from out to doubtful, and then he played. So right. I may have these dates wrong, but from being re-evaluated at 4 weeks and coming back later, he was actually out on the court, I think, in less than 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And I also read in the paper that he said that he had a platelet-rich plasma injection and felt immediately better. So I think that's, again, I'm not privy to the details, but that's the kind of thing that can help things heal quicker. When I did a PRP injection in the Achilles tendon of this professional athlete that I mentioned, we did that combined with laser treatment. And it's interesting, actually, I've mentioned on here low-level laser treatment before, so laser light powered with low level at which they produce heat. So I read that might have been Kevin Durant, but that one of those people after the surgery, they started using laser treatment too. I don't think it was Clay Thompson. I think it must have been him. So the point is that we're in an era where we're just scratching the surface now of helping things to heal quicker using platelet-rich plasma, maybe stem cell treatments, maybe laser light. So do I think people will come back quicker in the future? I do. I think it's going to await the stem cell treatments getting to be more mainstream, and the FDA letting us do it more. We have a stem cell center in Nassau, Bahamas, where we're licensed to do this kind of work. It's completely safe and it's effective, but we can't do it here unless it's part of an FDA trial or if somebody's very ill and you can get what's called compassionate use. But yeah, so I think the era of getting things to heal quicker has already started with PRP for some things, not other things. And I think that as we get better and better at this, there are things called exosomes out there. I think that in a 5-year time frame, these kinds of things are going to be used more and more, and recovery times are going to be shortened.
Hey, Doc, if people are because for me personally, it's a scary topic to touch on and discuss, because I've heard of the horror stories, and again, I use my buddy who tore both of his Achilles at the same time. Are there any exercises or recommendations from you that people can apply to their workout, regimen to prevent any sort of injuries as far as pulling that Achilles?
I'll tell you what I think, and I think that most professionals in our field would probably not agree with me. But when I first started in practice 35 years ago, there were various articles, and they talked about stretching to prevent injury and strength, so stretching and strengthening. And that's done a lot in rehab because it's kind of like two tools that people in rehab have, so they tend to get used. And early on, and I'm talking the 1980s, late 80s when I started in practice, I used to send people for this, and my impression was that people weren't getting better. In fact, they were getting irritated. So I have done a 360 on that, and now feel fairly strongly, actually, and this is what I tell people, that so what's out there, people will say that stretching, but I will tell you there are no studies showing that stretching helps. I mean, maybe it does, but there are no studies showing it. And there are studies now showing that stretching can cause injuries. There are several studies recently on aggressive hamstring stretching causing hamstring injuries. And I've had a couple of patients who injured their hamstring just that way. So what I think the main thing you want to do is avoid excess wear and tear. So how do you do that? So, you mentioned Michael Jordan before, who was relatively injury-free. I had a talk with Tim Grover's trainer some years ago, and my understanding was also, and who's a terrific professional, and so maybe I have this wrong, but my understanding is that he didn't really do leg weightlifting, that he would work with bands, things like that. So what I'm saying is, I think less is more. I think spending your time doing functional things is good, playing your sport, maybe a stationary bike, maybe an elliptical. But I think if you were to research, if you were to Google it and say exercises to help prevent Achilles strains, tears.
Right.
I could be wrong about this, but I'm guessing that you'll find people talking about doing stretching and strengthening. But I will tell you, I would not recommend it. I think that the wear and tear from the strengthening can predispose you to injury. If you're gonna stretch, you should make sure you stretch warm. But I don't think it does much. And so I think that if you focus on doing functional activities, avoid weightlifting for your legs, weightlift for your upper body, build upper body strength, work your core really hard. But for the legs, if you focus on functional things, I think that doing weightlifting and specific exercises beyond that, in my experience, does more harm than good. So just to be clear, a lot of people will disagree with me on that. And I didn't come to this so much from reading about it, because what I read decades ago was different. But after doing this for a long, long time, I've come to believe it pretty strongly.
Yeah, I can understand that. But again, for I'm sure many of our viewers and listeners taking in this podcast, from preschool, kindergarten, or whatever, and you're doing little stretches, you're always told to, do the stretches, do the what is it called? The hurdle stretch, right?
It's the hurdle stretch where you bring your leg back behind you is a particularly destructive one, actually. And it tends to damage your kneecap because it jams your kneecap into your thigh bone. So that's one I would definitely not do.
So why why is it prescribed and recommended that these are the sort of stretches that to get your body warmed up and loosened up? Why are you
Well, first of all, the warm up thing, the idea with stretching, if you're gonna stretch, you don't stretch to warm up, you warm up to stretch. So if you're gonna stretch, you should do something for 5 minutes, stationary bike or something, to warm yourself up before you stretch. So tendons and ligaments are what are called viscoelastic structures. It means the warmer they are, the more elastic they are. So if you warm up, which actually increases your core temperature and increases blood flow to that area, so these structures are warmer, they'll stretch more easily with less likelihood to be damaged. So I think warming up and starting slowly is important. I think backing off if you have problems is important. And I think one of the problems with stretching is that people have varying degrees of tightness of their joints. And if in some work done that indicates that people who have tight tendons have loose joints, so the tight tendons maybe protect the loose joints. So, one thing that happens, and we've been guilty of this in medicine a little bit, is we want one size fits all. We want everybody to look the same. So, some people can put their palms on the floor and stretch and touch their toes and they're fine. So we say, well, okay, we want everybody to be able to do that. But the problem is there are a lot of people whose biology just isn't happening. We see this in dancers, actually, especially male dancers, where ballet dancers, where flexibility is prized. And if you stretch aggressively, you can damage your knees, you can damage the labrums of your hip. So I think that has been historically in medicine and in my field a decreased tolerance for biologic or interpatient diversity. So there are people whose joints are tight, people whose joints are loose. When I first started in practice, there was just the end of an era when they used to put a bar on people's shoes if their legs turned out to point their, Dennis Brown bar was called, to point their feet straight ahead, because the thought is if your feet turned out, this was abnormal, and it's not abnormal. So I think that normal encompasses a much broader range of differences than we have traditionally acknowledged. And I mean, I'll tell you, doctors want to help people and physical therapists want to help people. And so it's an easy enough thing to say, oh, look at that. Gee, I think you're like that because this is tighter, that's looser, this is out of alignment. Let me go in there and help.
Right.
And I think that you have to be very careful. I think eating right and keeping your weight down and warming up before you do things and getting proper rest and stopping when things hurt, those are all things that help prevent injuries. But beyond that, I don't personally think that there's much you can do.
Wow. Closing. Lastly, you talked about the hamstrings, and we talked about warming up to stretch. I pulled my hamstring in my mid-30s, and I felt, hey, okay, ice it down, wrap it up, or whatever the case may be. You do the stretching, strengthen your leg muscles, and you'll be fine. But little did I know, that once for me, you pull the hamstring, you always have some sort of it's always going to be lingering there. How do you warm up or protect the hamstring once you finally do pull it? Because a lot of athletes get it, especially professional athletes. They get that hamstring. Yeah. How do you protect it and stretch it and get it loose and prepare for high performance?
So I'll tell you, I had a hamstring strain too for a long time, and I lift weights, upper body, but at one time I used to do leg curls and hamstring things, and I got kind of tweaked the hamstring, nothing horrible, but it's kind of always sore, and right. I used to stretch too, and so it lingered for 2 years, and wouldn't go away no matter what I did. And I was stretching and strengthening. So finally, I stopped stretching, and it got a little better.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped strengthening, and it went away completely, 100%. Probably took 6 months. And this is 5, 6, 7 years ago. So I
Right.
kind of thought there was a message in that. So I don't think. So I don't think you do anything. And I'll tell you what I really think. I mentioned this before. I think the increased incidence, because hamstring strains didn't used to be like this. I mean, people are just hurt all the time now. They didn't used to be. And it is my hypothesis. Hard to prove, although I've talked to a lot of professional athletes who agree with me, that I believe that the weightlifting predisposes to these injuries. Because if you look at the increased incidence of hamstring strains now compared to 30 years ago, I mean, what's different? You know, the main thing that's different is people are doing a lot more conditioning now than they used to. I had a talk with a Cubs Hall of Fame pitcher who we were talking about weightlifting for arms, and I was telling him, I said, you know, these pitchers are always having arm problems. I've mentioned this before, and I think maybe it's weightlifting. And he said, absolutely. And he was several decades ago and said, you know, people never used to do it. So it is my hypothesis that it's the increased conditioning that's contributing to this, because I don't know what else it could be. Now, the counter to that is, so I'm saying, you know, don't lift weights with your legs, don't do a lot of this. People say, well, hey, then you can't compete. The athletes are so big and strong that if you don't lift weights and get that size, you can't compete. And that maybe that's so, but I'll tell you, look at the Allen Iversons of the world, right? So he was 6 foot, 160 pounds, and people thought he was just going to get annihilated when he came into the league.
Right.
And he, I mean, maybe got hurt a little here and there, but he was very durable, played a long time, threw his body around, you know?
Right.
So there's skinny guys out there who do pretty well. And, you know, you look at old pictures. You look at the old pictures of the Boston Celtics or the Chicago Cubs or whoever, and oh, my goodness, they look like high school kids compared to today, you know? They're just so much less bulky.
Right.
But I'll tell you, they never, I mean, not like now. You know, John Stockton, not a very muscular guy, and played forever. I mean, all these guys, they just never got hurt. So you tell me, what's different now versus then? People lift more now, and I don't see another difference. And as to the argument that you need to be that big and strong to play, I mean, I don't know. Zach LaVine is phenomenal, right? I mean, he's not real muscular. And so I don't know that you do. I heard an interview this morning with Kyle Hendricks. So, you know, a lot of the Cubs pitchers, but Kyle Hendricks throws, I don't know, 80 something, right? You know? And so the thought is maybe you got to be big and strong so you can throw 100 miles an hour. Well, you know, I don't know about that. So I would say beware of excess conditioning, especially for your legs, because it is my hypothesis. I cannot prove it. That it causes injuries.
Yeah. You know, I think the big issue, I think the biggest problem, Doc, one reason why we're seeing all these injuries is because these athletes are pushing their bodies. And I think the big reason behind it are the salaries, are the contracts. I mean, you know, God bless him, Patrick Mahomes, you know, signs a 10-year deal with the Kansas City Chiefs for $500 million. You know, it's just I think the money drives the athletes, the organizations, the trainers. I think steroids, you know, even when we were kids coming up, played an important role because people wanted to get bigger, they wanted to get faster, and they wanted to get stronger to compete because they didn't have that particular, you know, makeup. And so I think all of these over time contributes to, these athletes pushing their bodies to the limit in order to get the most out of it and not realizing the repercussions, meaning resulting in injuries. And so I think that's a really big reason that we're seeing all these injuries based on the money value that's placed on a high level performance in the professional ranks.
And so you're talking about doing more conditioning to get bigger and stronger to do better. That's what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, because if you recall, I remember in the 70s when even with the Olympic athletes training and the talk about steroid use and you know, if you use steroids, You get in the gym, you're going to be able to work longer, harder, faster, and bulk up longer, and bigger and better. And I think it evolved and took off from there. So the point is, and we see that with baseball, the PEDs, where even minor league players is like, hey, listen, I got to take this supplement or whatever I have to do because I want to make it to the show. I want to make it to the big leagues. And we've seen athletes who were caught later that their numbers have increased from here to here. And I think, whatever you, like you said, whatever you put in your body, it's going to come out one way or the other, and your body's going to react to it. And I think that's one reason why we see so many injuries.
Yeah, I think you're right. I would agree. But what I was going to say is, if you look at the amount of time they played, right, the athletes used to, not conditioning, but in games, played much more than now. I mean, pitchers, if they do 200 innings now, you're an Ironman, and they all used to do 300. And, playing in games, the guys who are out there quoted Michael Jordan recently about load management, and he said, I get paid to play 82. And right. you look at the minutes these guys used to play. So they used to play a lot more, but you're right. I don't think they conditioned as much.
Yeah.
But my point is, I don't know how much it helps. I mean, Steph Curry, of course, Allen Iverson, they're not Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, I don't know if you remember when he was drafted. So he was obviously very good, but there were a lot of people who had skepticism about him. And I remember that I don't know if they did a bench press or whatever, but he was not very strong.
No.
And, and he's still kind of lean, but it hasn't mattered. So I think that physical strength is overplayed. I mean, if you're a low post player, if you're a Lowry Markkanen, put on some weights, you don't get pushed around. Right. Duncan Robinson in the Heat, put on some weights. So I think if you're skinny enough, but Kevin Garnett wasn't real big and strong and did fine. So personally, I think it's more important to be skillful. Particularly in a sport like basketball. If you're a lineman in football, I mean, you got to be in the weight room, obviously, no question about it.
Right.
But some of these other sports, and even in baseball, I mean, I know everybody's doing the long ball, but Ernie Banks, right? Gee whiz, he was very lean and crazy home run numbers with his wrist. So I don't know. I think my opinion, time's better spent working on technique than in trying to be the Incredible Hulk in the weight room.
No, you're absolutely right. And you look at the great Hall of Famer, Cy Young Award winner Greg Maddux with the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah,
well, he wasn't a really big guy, but he mastered his skill and his craft, and he is a Hall of Famer. So I'm with you. I'm along with you. But you know what, Doc? We're not writing the paychecks for these players to get out there on the field. And Fernando Tatis Jr., who just signed a big whopping deal himself, was it $340 million over a 10-year period of time or whatever. But I mean, these owners are writing these checks, and they want these guys out on the baseball diamond, the football field, and on the court. And everybody wants to keep their jobs, from the trainers all the way up. So they're doing any and everything possible to make sure that those athletes are out there to perform and entertain those of us who are still confined to our homes based on the pandemic. But hey, Doc, let me ask you, before we let you go, if anyone wants to find out more information, if they want to find out more about injuries and what they can do, whether it's a shoulder, elbow, ankle, or a knee, or whatever the case may be, how do they find you?
So 847-699-6810. You'll get a live human being. We've got an excellent staff and are happy to help any way we can.
Sounds good. And you guys have helped me out for sure. And let's continue to help some people out, whether they are live and in person or they're checking us out on the podcast here. The information is always useful and a wealth of knowledge that can be applied to everyone's individual and personal lives. Doc, thank you so very much. We'll talk to you next week on the Sports Medicine Update.
Jared, thank you very much. Have a great week.
reset, rejuvenate. Go to our link right now to restart your life. TheRewindSports60.com. What are you waiting for? Hope to see you soon. The Rewind Sports 60.
It's the freshest radio show in town. Feeling marvelous, I've been with Jerry Rouse. It's the freshest radio show in town. Feeling marvelous, I've been with Jerry Rouse. WCPT. WCPT.
This the coldest sports show. You were getting the hour from 6 p.m. to 7. Chillin' with Lauren Cox and the man Marvelous. Shout out to Mr. Rouse and the Italian style. You what sports is the only politic.
WCPT. WCPT. It's the freshest radio show in town. Feeling marvelous, I've been with Jerry Rouse. It's the freshest radio show in town. Feeling marvelous, I've been with Jerry Rouse.
Here you go.
Okay. Live from WCPT, 8:20 a.m. in Chicago. This is the Rewind Sports 60. I am known as the Marvelous One. I don't know why. Dan Marver, and we're here with Jerry Riles, who is the star and host of the show. And now I will present to you Jerry Riles.
The Marvelous One. What's up, Marvelous? How are you?
Well, you know what? We made it here. That's important.
Yeah, it is important. Got a little bit of feedback over there for some reason. I don't know why, but it's okay. Do I have the wrong mic on? I don't know what it is. Hey, man, good to see you out there. Thank you so very much. It's great to see your beautiful smile and your beautiful mug.
Huh?
It's a lot better to see than the snow that I was seeing driving in.
Did you get a parking place? That was my problem.
You know what? I got to commend the people here at WCPT 820 AM and the general manager. I love this guy, but Mark Penske. There's a little spot that was shoveled out in the front
with your name on it.
Well, it didn't have my name on it, but it didn't have any furniture in the place of it.
Good.
So dibs. So I took advantage of the opportunity and parked right there, dead smack in the middle.
I saved that
in the
for
front.
you. I parked a half block away.
Not a half block.
Yeah, down the street.
Did you really?
Yeah, past the bus station stop.
Really?
Yeah, I just wanted to be in a nice, clean spot.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And you did, and you trucked it on down.
Yeah, a half block. I can handle that.
Well, a half block for me that's
okay.
asking a lot.
Yeah, I did that without my wheelchair.
Yeah, that's asking a lot,
Yeah.
man. I don't do that. But we want you to be a part of the fastest hour in sports conversation, and it is the Rewind Sports 60 WCPT 820 AM in the beautiful, beautiful, snowy, cold city. It's not as cold, but beautiful city, Chicago, Illinois, and of course,
Yeah. You know who's
in the
not,
great neighborhood of Jefferson Park.
You know who's not used to this is the great state of Texas.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're messed up.
Do you have family down in Texas?
I do. Sister's there.
What part?
Near Austin. She's not too affected, but they're not used. They can't.
What do you mean she's not too affected? They don't have any power.
It's cold.
What are you talking about?
Cold, no power. I mean,
she's okay.
It's not, I mean, she's okay.
What are you saying? She's used to not having power?
No, she's okay
She
now.
used to being cold?
She's okay now.
What is wrong with you?
No, I mean, she was affected, but she's not affected now, is what I meant to say.
Okay. Well, they're still affected. Is it completely turned on and everything's okay?
Okay, she didn't go to Cancun. That's all I know. like her senator. So.
Let me tell you something, man.
Right.
Of course, we don't talk politics here. Because sports the only politic.
Exactly, but
let me tell you
sports
something.
Sports are a little slow right now.
Listen, I don't know why I don't know.
It's probably me.
Yeah, it is you somehow, some way, but there's a microphone or something. Your headphones are getting too close to the microphone.
It was my exciting opening, probably.
It is so exciting. But let me tell you something, man. Here's the deal. it's amazing. It's amazing to me.
Yes.
You know, over the past 2-3 years, they say common sense isn't common anymore. And for me, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, well, it goes both ways. There's a
no.
Governor Cuomo.
Well, that was just what you mean with him not
with the nursing home deal.
Yeah. That wasn't. He was trying to do it a political maneuver because he knew there was going to be backlash if the numbers were high.
Right.
But you have to understand, and if you're standing on your soapbox the way he was all throughout this and placing blame of the guy who was in office, during that time, you can't play political chess and say, okay, hey, we're gonna cut the numbers in half, because if we give them the real numbers, we're gonna get heat, we're gonna get backlash, and we don't want to go through that right now. You're going to be exposed. And he was getting, from public opinion, he was getting a lot of positive support from a lot of people because he was standing up to the president. He was fighting for the common man, and he was trying to do what was logical and reasonable. But that was just a bad political decision that he made. But this other guy, and then he's throwing everybody under the bus. Well, my daughters wanted me to go. Well, I was coming back on another day. No.
Well, they weren't 5 years old, I don't think, either. So, I mean, they could have traveled by themselves.
He's going with his neighbors. Hey, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here. It's too cold. It's no power. Let's get out of here. You wanted to build a wall? You want to help build a wall to keep those people out? Let's go over to where they are.
Yeah.
Let's go to Mexico. Let's go on over there. I know you wanted to build a wall, but let's go on over there right now because it's warmer there and it's safer there and it's nice.
Yep.
Come on. And then he gets on the plane and he goes, you know what? When I sat down in my seat, I started having second thoughts. What? Are you kidding me? It wasn't the fact that there were cameras following you and people were putting you on Facebook Live and all that stuff. It wasn't none of that stuff, and the tweets and everything. Social media blew up because they saw you in the airport with your bags and stuff. I mean, hey, listen. And now the guy's out there handing out water. Hey, I'm here to help out. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Marvelous.
Yeah, well, all I know is a week from tomorrow, there's spring training games in Arizona and Florida. Changing the subject.
Well, you opened up. you opened up the door.
You asked me about Texas.
You put the golf ball right there on the tee, and I just had to tee it up.
You asked me about Texas.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do have spring training coming up, and we got a great show on tap for you, ladies and gentlemen, and all you youngsters out there. We got a great show on tap, as fastest hour in sports conversation. The Rewind Sports 60, WCPT 820 AM. We got Bob Nightingale of USA Today, the Major League Baseball writer and columnist. He'll be joining us to talk some spring training baseball and, of course, the Chicago White Sox baseball. We had an opportunity to talk Cub baseball last week. We're going to give our time to the Chicago White Sox because I don't know about you, Marvelous, and hopefully we'll get a chance to go over to Guarantee Rate Field this season. But I'm ready to get my playoff tickets. More importantly, because they made the playoffs this past year, and the guy that's finally gone, he's gone. But I'm ready to get some World Series tickets.
It looks favorable for maybe there being some attendance because I know that for a fact. There's spring college football in the Missouri Valley Conference. At Illinois State, for example, they're going to have 20% attendance allowed. So maybe that's a sign that we'll have some baseball attendance. Yeah,
hopefully we'll have some baseball attendance. And I know that Dr. Anthony Fauci was on with Buster Olney of ESPN, their baseball correspondent, and Dr. Fauci said, hey, I don't want to go on record. I don't want to go out on a limb and say that fans will be allowed to get back into the ballpark because if something happens, everyone's going to place the blame on him. And he didn't want to step out that far and say, hey, but he's indicating that there's a possibility that fans will be able to come out. Masks will still be in place, of course, and social distancing. But let me answer the question. If he gives the approval to say, hey, you know what? You can have, people go out to the ballpark and take in these games. Then it comes back to like, for instance, here in Chicago, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, she has to sign off on it before Cub fans and Sox fans go out to the ballpark, correct?
I guess I would believe that's correct. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. Do you think that we'll get a chance to get out this year?
Quite possibly. Maybe they'll want proof of being vaccinated. That's possibly the case. And
well, they wouldn't be able to do that.
I mean,
they won't allow you in if you're not vaccinated. They can't do that.
They're not allowing. They probably won't allow people to fly, particularly overseas, without being vaccinated. I can assure you of that.
Okay, I can understand that, but you can't. I don't think you can legally tell someone, "Hey, I don't know," but I don't think you can legally tell someone, "Well, you can't buy a ticket," or even if you have a ticket or season tickets, you can't come in because you haven't been vaccinated.
Well, maybe they'll just take temperatures. That they can do.
Yeah, they can do that.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can tell people, hey, you can't come into this venue because you haven't been vaccinated.
Okay. You're probably right. But you never know.
Yeah. I think it's your headphones. Do you have something? Maybe you want to turn your headphones down or something.
Same headphones I've had every week, but here we go.
Yeah, turn that level down there.
Okay, here we go.
That's Radio 101.
Radio 101.
Yeah, Radio 101.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't.
There's no button. But
Devin Tingle, our producer in here, trying to make sure that everything is up and operating properly. I think he had his levels too high in his headphone jack.
Oh my God! Now it's really too high.
And he had it close to his microphone, so he's getting some feedback. We apologize for technical difficulties.
You're saying my cholesterol levels are too high?
I never said anything about cholesterol, brother. I never said anything about cholesterol, but I do want to get your thoughts and your input on your. Before we get Bob Nightingale on, I want to get your insight as far as Major League Baseball returning, and of course your perspective on the Cubs and the Sox.
Well, in the shortened, the truncated season, both the Cubs and the Sox made the playoffs. The Cubs actually won their division, and the Sox ended up finishing in the 7 hole. They were behind Cleveland and Minnesota, but I don't think that's going to happen this year with their closer situation. They've got that nailed down now. They took care of that, and they've got a better.
So when you say they, could you talk to Cubs?
Sox.
Okay.
Sox are going to be able to pass Minnesota and Cleveland this year, which they ended up not doing. They finished behind them last year.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the court, I mean, I listened last week very carefully to our guest, and the Cubs might be better off than I thought they would be. I didn't realize that St. Louis and Milwaukee and Cincinnati were not as strong as last year, and apparently they're not.
Right.
So I was educated last week. So I think the Sox have a better chance of winning their division still than the Cubs because I think they have a stronger. Their offense is unbelievable, and they have a closer, and they have better starting pitching, and that division is highly winnable. Cleveland and Minnesota are not the top teams in the league by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that they should be able to prevail in the AL Central.
Well, it's interesting because after we had an opportunity to talk to Gordon Whitmire of NBC Sports Chicago, their Chicago Cub insider, and he shared with us what I left from his conversation last week was that it's the glass is either half empty or half full. It's a 50-50 deal regarding the Cubs and how they. How things pan out for them this upcoming season. But listening to some of the national pundits and some of the people in the know, so to speak, they kind of have the Cubs a little bit more glass full type.
Mm-hmm.
Not just a 50-50 deal from the way that I see it, but they had the Cubs looking better than what I thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as he pointed out, Nolan Arenado's the big addition for the Cardinals.
Right.
So that will help them. But I think that the problem's going to be, Arrieta, maybe, I don't think it's going to be 2016 Arrieta.
Right.
And they have Hendricks, which is, of course, the same name as the new Sox closer, last name.
Right.
In any event, their starting rotation will not be as strong. I mean, they did lose quite a bit. They did get some exchange for Darvish, but Davies, by the way, but I think their starting rotation will be as good. I mean, their bullpen was not that great last year. Maybe Kimbrel will come back to form, but the lineup, they have a few questions. They got Peterson to play left field, and we were talking about center. They lost Almora, so I guess Happ's the center fielder, and they still have Hayward and Bryant and Baez and and whatnot. And second base, probably Bodie or somebody like that with, of course, Rizzo at first and Contreras. So they do have a solid 8 lineup, so that should carry them. But I don't know what the bench will be like, and I don't know about middle relief and the starting pitching. They'll have to, Mills, who actually pitched the no-hitter last year, will be in the rotation. So there's a lot of question marks because they did lose Schwarber and Lester, of course, and Darvish. So again, they may be able to prevail in this season like they did last year in the shortened season, but I have my questions on that.
Yeah. And you know what? Let's go out to a gentleman. This guy knows the ins and the outs and the in-betweens as far as Major League Baseball is concerned, and he can give us a little bit better perspective on how these teams are looking and the projections as far as how they will, possibly pan out. Hopefully, 162-game schedule. He's on our TRS60 hotline, ladies and gentlemen. He's a friend of the program. He's Bob Nightingale, USA Today, Major League Baseball writer, columnist, joining us once again on The Rewind. Bob, how are you, buddy?
Yeah, doing well. How about you guys?
Hey, man, Thank you so very much. We're doing well, and we appreciate you taking some time out on this Sunday evening. Here in Chicago, the snow just started up about an hour ago, and we're expecting more snow, between 1 to 3 inches of snow on the ground here in Chicago. In the month of February, or in this first month and a half of 2021, we've gotten, I suspect, somewhere about 30 inches of snow. 30 inches of snow. And in a 15-day span, we had accumulated upwards of 25 to 27 inches of snow. So the ground hall said 6 more weeks of snow, winter, and we're certainly feeling it here in the great city of Chicago, my good friend. How are you doing?
Well, I'm in Phoenix, where about the 25% of the population is from Chicago. I mean, we have the same Chicago restaurant. They start here, go to Chicago, or start in Chicago, come here. So I think that's why we see so many people from Chicago living in Phoenix.
Yeah, I'm trying to plan a trip to get out of here and go to Phoenix as well and take in some spring training games, whether it's the Cubs or the Sox. But I can understand people getting away and trying to get to a warmer place so that they can have some sort of sanity, because with the pandemic and with the snow and the cold and everything else going on, it can literally drive you nuts. So I certainly understand those folks down there trying to get away and enjoy themselves. But as far as we want you to come on and talk with us as far as the landscape in baseball, but in particular here in Chicago regarding and Rick Hahn is basically putting the bullseye on the team's back and say, hey, we're World Series bound. But I want to get your insight and your thoughts on this 2021 Chicago White Sox baseball team from your perspective at this point.
Well, when you think back, the White Sox are kind of like the 2015 Cubs. They went through the rebuild. They are built to win. We'll see how far they go, but they certainly expect to be in the postseason. I do too, whether it's expanded or not expanded, and get a playoff berth. But yeah, they went through the growing pains, everything else, and now they're built to win. I think the American League is much easier than the National League right now. It's just you don't have those big powerhouses like the Dodgers, the Padres, and some of the other teams, where the American League is pretty much wide open.
Yeah, it looks like this. Dan in the studio here. Tampa obviously got to the World Series, and and there are other strong teams. But I would agree with you that the National League looks a little stronger right now. But in terms of what it looks like, last year the Sox, as I mentioned earlier, actually finished being Minnesota and Cleveland, and I think they can certainly overcome Minnesota and Cleveland and win that division this year. Don't you?
Well, Minnesota's still strong. They still beefed up. They got a lot of pieces. I think it's going to be close. So I would not be surprised if Minnesota won the division and White Sox get the wild card, or flip flop. But I think those two teams might be separated within 2-3 games of one another. I think Cleveland's going to take a dip because of Lindor, but they're not a pushover by any means. Even Kansas City is beefed up. Detroit is beefed up. So it's not going to be the easiest schedule like a year ago. But that being said, when you look around, Yankees have flaws, Toronto has flaws. In the West, Oakland and
Houston
are just good teams, not great teams. So I think it's wide open.
Hey, Bob, the big question here in Chicago and, of course, on the South Side is the 76-year-old Tony La Russa is finally back in uniform after 10 years up in the box. And I read where he said, you know, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up because he can't believe it. And he's so excited, you know, to get back to this moment. Share your experience, your thoughts on Tony La Russa entering the 2021 spring training for this season.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's 76 years old, and like you said, hasn't managed since 2011, but he hasn't been away from the game. He went to the commissioner's office. He was a president of baseball operations, you know, of the Arizona Diamondbacks, in the same position as Kenny Williams with the White Sox. Special assistant with the Red Sox, won a World Series ring there with the Angels. So he still had a ton of games and watching and analyzing everything else. So I think when people say, well, he's, you know, it's not like he's been sitting on his couch eating potato chips, he's been out. So I think he'll be fine. You know, people talk about the age. You know, what's Dusty? I think Dusty Baker's 71, 72, and you know, shoot, the rest of the country 78. He's running a country. You know, Tony's just running a baseball club.
Hey, Bob, you said, and I love him and I respect him, but you said Kenny Williams, and I don't think Sox fans want to see Kenny Williams come down and manage this ball club. And I don't care how good they are and how the potential and the projections are. I really don't think Sox fans want to see Kenny Williams come down from the box and put on a uniform and manage this ball team. So I think Tony La Russa, yes, he's been a part of the game, but it's just interesting dynamic that he's back. I think in a place where he really feels comfortable and he's eager to show people that he still has it and he can command, manage, and direct a team to a World Series championship. That's the way I see it. And no disrespect to the great Kenny Williams, but as far as Tony La Russa is concerned, and of course you know and you've been following this story closely as well. Was the DUI that he was charged with, his second DUI back in February of 2020, and of course, you know, he got penalized, and some people were kind of upset and insulted with the penalty, the slap on the wrist, so to speak. 20 community hours. I think he was home confinement and is fined for a few dollars. Some people thought that was just a slap in the face, and they thought maybe that the White Sox and in particular Jerry Reinsdorf should have really paid a little bit more attention to that and maybe made a different decision based on, you know, everything coming out. What is the feel based on the DUI and what the penalty that he received?
Well, as far as the penalty received, you know, I live here in Phoenix, and the DWI laws in Arizona are the toughest in the country. I mean, Mark Gray spent a month in jail here. So did Charles Barkley, you know, for extreme DUIs. You know, the DUI here is 08. Yeah, I think it's the same as Illinois. I think he tested at .09. You know, if he was over 15, hey, he would have spent a month in jail himself. But, yeah, they don't mess around. You know, it's not like you know, in Florida and some of these other states where you kind of shrug your shoulders at it, you know, where we just saw what Johnny Damon, you know, allegedly blew a .30. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the reports are. So, but yeah, I don't think Arizona went easy on him at all. In the 07 arrest, being in Florida, and because of the time difference, I don't think it counted toward this. If he had that in Arizona, it would have been different, particularly if it was in a shorter time span. So, I mean, the penalty he got was standard, and I don't think they said, the state of Arizona is going to go easy on Tony La Russa because he's a Hall of Fame manager.
Should the White Sox have stuck to their guns and you know, continue to stay the course and move forward, or should they have caved in to you know, fan base pressure based on what happened? Because some people speculate that if it was someone else, or maybe if he wasn't a close relationship with Jerry Reinsdorf, that they more or less would have been forced to turn down Tony La Russa and go in a different direction.
Well, maybe if they didn't know about it, but they did. If they didn't know about it, and he wait and tell us, you know, that sort of thing. It did not happen under their watch. It happened in the Los Angeles Angels watch in February. The Angels did not fire him. They knew about it. They kept him. So I think a few factors in play there.
This is Dan again. La Russa guy was 1 day of home detention, a $1,400 fine, and 20 hours of community service, if I'm not mistaken. And so you say that's a standard penalty in Arizona?
Yeah. So I think it was if you guys had the same thing, it would have been the same penalty. No, it wasn't like he got off by anything, but that was the standard for being, in their view, a first-time offender at .09. Now, like I said, if he was over 15, that's considered extreme DUI, and that's why Mark Grace and Charles Barkley spent 30 days in a tent downtown. They were allowed to go home at night, but they had to be. They were allowed to work during the day, but they had to be in tent at night and spend every day there for 30 days.
Yeah, it was a second offense, but it doesn't count because the previous one was in 2007. So that's why it was. In a
different state.
Right.
Yeah, I think even.
Yeah. Hey, Bob.
It would have been different, but not different state.
Right.
Hey, Bob. We're on with Bob Nightingale, USA Today, MLB writer, columnist, joining us on the Rewind Sports 60. Here's the deal. The question is this thing going to be like a cloud hanging over Jerry's head, Tony's head, and the Sox head? Or as we know in the world of sports, winning cures everything. Is this something that's going to be lingering, or the Sox get off to a good start and continue to own, the division and make it to the playoffs? Is this something that the Sox fans are going to look and say, hey, you know what? It happened. It's over. Let's move forward. We're winning.
Yeah, I do think winning cures everything, whether, right or wrong. That's the way it is. I mean, the Cubs, they traded for Aroldis Chapman after the domestic violence thing, was shooting, a gun in his garage. And when they won the World Series, hey, no big deal. We won. That sort of thing. Of course, they had the Addison Russell case. So, I'm not saying it's right, but it's almost like if you win, things are ignored. It'd be different too. Obviously, if something had happened, if he had injured anybody, somebody in his car or someone outside the car is completely different as well.
It's interesting that the White Sox and you equate them to, the 2015 Cubs and Cub fans, Chicago baseball fans understand and went through, the transition and the rebuilding process. And of course, you get the World Series championship. The White Sox are on the same course. But in particular, I think what is going to be more focus and emphasis on this season is the transition of eras, and we've seen it over the past year or two, regarding the swag of these young baseball players, i.e., throwing the bat, after jacking out a home run, staring down their opponent, whatever the case may be. And we know what Tim Anderson, he did last year against Kansas City, flipping his bat, and, what happened in the playoffs and all that stuff. But my question to you is, how much swag are we expected to see with this Chicago White Sox baseball team, Tim Anderson being placed on the video game cover or whatever? Is there going to be a lot of swag coming from the South Side based on the talent that they have, and of course the Hall of Fame, World Series champion manager and Tony La Russa? How much swag are we going to see?
Oh, I think just as much swag as they want. As much as they win, the more swag. Well, it's tough to do swag when you're losing. People forget Tony La Russa, managed Oakland A's. I mean, they may have more swag than Ricky Henderson or Dave Henderson or Dennis Eckersley. We go on and on. Jose Canseco. So he never put a stop to that. And we're talking about before swag was popular. So, in the 80s, early 90s. So, yeah, there's no way it'll be a problem in Chicago.
I'm a big proponent of pitching, particularly in the playoffs. I mean, we look at it, we got Giolito, Keuchel, Lynn, Cease, Lopez, Rodon in the starting rotation. I mean, I think that's going to be the key. Honestly, with their offense is their offense, but they're going to be able to outscore other teams. It seems to me.
Well, I think the key, and I'm not saying that he's the key to get the World Series, but I think a huge key is Michael Kopech. Terrific arm. Obviously opted out last year, had some, problems. And we'll see. If he delivers like they thought, I mean, let's be honest, he was a huge key to that big trade with Chris Hill. So I think if he delivers and pitches up to his talent level, that will be massive. I think he may be the key to whether the White Sox get all the way or not.
That he was on my radar as far as the pitching is concerned with the White Sox, and this guy was out for basically 2 years with the Tommy John surgery, and of course with the pandemic from last year. So he's definitely itching for a scratch to get to this, back to the big leagues, and of course pitching on the South Side. But as far as the overall rotation for the White Sox, how strong do they look to you? I got a question mark with Carlos Rodon, but Liam Hendricks, as you mentioned, new acquisition to the White Sox this season, said that Dylan Cease has the potential and the skill set, and if he stays on course and on path, that this guy is a Cy Young Award winner, and he's going to have a fantastic career. That's remarkable. How strong do you think this White Sox pitching rotation can be for 2021?
Well, it certainly has some potential. I'm not sure how deep it is. And let's be honest, going from a 60-game season to 162, you need depth. I tell you what, of all the moves that they made, we haven't talked about it. I love Lance Lynn move the most. This guy's a workhorse. He takes the ball. He was the Cy Young running there for Texas Rangers all last year. Mm-hmm. Baltimore at the end, I think he finished 4th or 5th. But yeah, just a guy that wants the ball for 200 innings. I think he's going to be a huge key too. But I think he's so reliable, you don't think of him as an X factor. You're just counting on him. But I think of all the moves they made, I might like him the best.
Yeah, he won 16 games in 2019. He was 16-11, and for that matter, Giolito won 14 games in a full season, and so that's pretty good right there. They have two pitchers that could potentially get 30 wins for you.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a old school. When people talk about Mark Burley and some of those guys with the White Sox days, Jack McDowell, yeah, he's that type of guy. I mean, he's upset when he doesn't get the ball. So Russa had him his. I want to say his rookie year. Anyways, in 2011, but the guy's a stud. He helped out every rotation. I love that move they made.
Hey, real quick, a couple more minutes with Bob Nightingale of USA Today, covering the Major League Baseball, talking Chicago White Sox baseball here on WCPT 820 AM. As far as the pandemic, as far as COVID-19, and everyone's trying to do their part and take their proper precautions to stay safe. We've already had a few players already opt out this season. But my question is regarding what's going on in spring training. Tell us about the electronic contact tracing wristbands that Major League Baseball said that they're going to implement during spring training.
Yeah, so they have them on their wristbands. We haven't been allowed, the media that is, haven't been allowed into the spring training camps until tomorrow, and we'll see it for ourselves. Mm-hmm. But I think just taking that seriously, say, hey, if you guys go to a club or restaurant at night, you test positive, we can find out exactly where you've been. So up to you. But they've been very careful on this. A good sign. Only 13 members, players and staff members tested positive so far. Although I did see where I think 6 Tigers tested positive. But these guys know, hey, you can't go out if you want to play 162. No bars, no indoor restaurants. As enticing as it is to go out in Scottsdale, Arizona, or Tampa, Florida, West Palm, you can't do it. And I think now people know this, where they don't want to take the risk either. No one wants to have their picture showing up on some camera phone, on TMZ.
Yeah. You certainly don't want that to happen. But hey, man, you got a bunch of 20-something-year-olds making a lot of money and enjoying what some arguably would say the best sport on the planet. That's America's favorite pastime. So let's strap on the seatbelt and get ready for a ride. And hopefully we get through 162 games. But before we let you go, got to get your reaction, your response on the big contract, 14-year deal, $340 million. Fernando Tatis Jr. Holy Moses. What did you think about that? And how does that position the San Diego Padres as far as postseason play is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, I just talked to the owner maybe 2 hours ago. They think it's going to be a good deal. So their view is, okay, he's going to make about $34 million in the next 4 years, which is save him about $20 million in arbitration. And then if he was going to be a free agent 4 years, they're signing him to a 10-year deal for $306. And they think the path he's on is going to be worth every penny. That basically will be bigger and stronger. So we'll see. I mean, I think the stunning part is when he's played 143 games. But they think it's a wise business decision. We'll see. But obviously a huge gate attraction, once you have fans. And they're supposed to have fans in California opening day, so maybe in Chicago as well. But yeah, they're excited in San Diego. They're going against the Dodgers, but they're giving them every fight. And the Dodgers are number one team in baseball. The Padres may be number two.
Does that put some heat on the Dodgers to try to maintain their position on top of the mantle?
Yeah, I think that's why they went and got Trevor Bauer. I don't think they get Trevor Bauer and step up to the last second, if not for what the Padres have done. So yeah, definitely.
Hey man, listen, we can continue to talk with you. We love the conversation and knowledge. If anybody wants to find you, if they don't already know where to find you, how do they get a hold of you? How do they read you? How do they follow you?
Yeah, just usually tweet my stories out. So just B Nightingale on Twitter or find me on usatoday.com.
Sounds good. Hey, Bob, thank you so very much again for taking some time out on this Sunday evening to join us to talk some baseball, spring training style. Enjoy the nice temperatures in the Arizona area, man. And who knows, maybe I'll get a chance to give you a fist bump or something in the next few weeks before teams leave for the regular season. But thank you so very much for taking some time and spreading the love and the knowledge, my friend.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Take care. We'll be in contact. Bob Nightingale, USA Today, Major League Baseball writer, columnist, covering not only the Major League Baseball, but, of course, insights to the Chicago White Sox.
Jerry, if you can't do that, I think WCPT really needs to have a representative at spring training. And if you're not going to go, I think that you should consider somebody else.
Well, you're going to have to quarantine for 10 days, I think.
Well, I'll be totally vaccinated, though. So does that
That's
help?
true. That's exactly right.
And you won't be, so I have an advantage.
You're one up on me. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, if there's anything in the world of sports you want to talk to us about, feel free to give us a call. Our number is 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Before we're out of here, we're going to get an opportunity. I don't know if you watched this last night, Marvelous. It was on ESPN, a boxing match, not on pay-per-view.
Oh.
You got to sit down in your living room chair and the sofa and watch a hell of a fight.
Yeah.
Did you see it?
Yeah, they weren't messing around. There was a really good, right onto the chin, boom. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! It was an impressive fight. It was an impressive battle.
The guy was carried away.
It was phenomenal, and I had to text another good friend of the program here at the Rewind Sports 60, and that, of course, Frances Cruz, the founder and she does everything for BoxingNews.com here in the Chicagoland area, but she's definitely on top of sports and on top of boxing. And oh my God, I had to text her and invite her on the program. We'll be talking with her shortly, but it was just amazing. The intriguing thing for me watching this bout was the fact that I watched the weigh-in the day before. And let's bring Frances in right now. Is she ready? I watched the weigh-in before, and she's going to give us a little bit. She's on hold. Hey, Francis Cruz.
Hey, Jerry, how's it going?
It's going okay. It's going okay. Thank you so very much for joining us on the Rewind Sports 60 WCPT 820 AM. Say hello to the marvelous one, Dan Marvel.
Hello, Francis.
Hello, how's it going, Dan?
Great. And you?
Hey, Francis, thank you. I appreciate you. I was telling the listening audience and, of course, Marvelous, that watching the fight last night, it was on free TV, first of all. Well, if you have cable or whatever. Yeah, it's on free TV, ESPN, and I'm watching this thing, Oscar Valdez and Miguel Berchelt, if I said his name right. I'm watching this thing, and I'm like, my mouth is hitting the floor as I, drop the popcorn and, the juice out of my mouth. But it hit the floor because it was really a dynamic and intriguing and impressive, surprising fight. But I say all that to say it because I watched the weigh-in the day before, and Miguel had to drop weight, correct? And he made weight. But then immediately after making weight, he and his trainers, they started feeding him. He was eating peaches, he was eating soup, he was drinking this, he was doing everything. And help me out here, because I'm not as astute to the sport as you are. But did that have some effect on his performance yesterday, which gave Valdez the opportunity to capitalize and take the WBC Junior Lightweight World title last night?
Oh, definitely. I think so. I didn't think that Berchelt looked very sharp last night. I've seen him look much more dominant in previous performances. He's very powerful, has very nice footwork, but last night just wasn't his night. And I also thought Valdez, he stepped it up. We saw some classic moves from Valdez, most resemblant of his career in 2016. He had a lot more of that amateur style going on last night, moving around the ring and not brawling as much. And to me, I always thought that Oscar Valdez would really shine in the boxing ring, just following that amateur style as opposed to trying to step up to be the brawler. I never really thought that would lead him to success. I think there's a difference between being a fighter that can go toe-to-toe, but, be a brawler, and then a fighter that can be more elusive and then move around the ring. And I think that Oscar Valdez will have more success with that in his career as opposed to being the brawler. He's just so quick and so light on his feet.
We're on with the great Francis Cruz for BoxingNews.com, president and founder, joining us on the Rewind Sports 60 WCPT 820 AM, talking about the Oscar Valdez victory over Miguel Berchelt. Is it Berchelt or Berchelt? Berchelt? Yes. A TKO, 10th round. 1 second left in the 10th round. He threw a left hook and laid him out, Francis. And you heard the pop. What was your reaction when you saw that?
Oh, nothing but awe. I was actually so scared for him when I saw him hit the the canvas first, face first. I was so nervous. I was just like, oh my God, he looks dead.
Yeah.
That's really what I thought immediately. And I thought that the fight should have been stopped sooner. After round 9, I thought the fight should have been stopped. I thought his team should have just thrown in the towel, and that's it. Because there was a point when the fight wasn't really that competitive anymore, and I felt that Valdez was just getting his way with Berchelt, and Berchelt wasn't doing anything to be effective in the exchanges. He looked slower and more ineffective and just more vulnerable and open to punches.
But credit to
at that point,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, credit to the ref, the official, because prior to the 10th round starting, he went to the corner, Berchelt's corner, and asked them, "Hey, do you guys want to stop the fight?" And they're like, "No, they're like, hey, we want to continue to fight." And to some degree, because he got rocked in the 4th round. He got rocked in the 4th round, and he tried to stand as still and as prone as he possibly could because his legs were so wobbly, and had he made a step, he would have fell over. But I commend him for being that champion and weathering the storm and fighting through to even get to the 10th round. But the ref was like, "Hey, do you guys want to continue to go on?" And this corner say, "Hey, we want to do that." Is that a sign of a champion to say, "Hey, you know what? If I'm going to lose and I'm going to go out, they're going to knock me out. I'm not throwing in the towel"?
I think that's a sign of a champion, a Mexican champion, because I think they would rather get knocked out than quit. I think that definitely is a sign of a champion, but I also think it's the responsibility of the trainer to protect their fighter. And I think after round 9, he looked pretty much out on his feet. I didn't think that he could continue any longer. After round 4, Burchell really impressed me. He put on the pressure. He wasn't fighting like a scared fighter. He was fighting like somebody who wanted to win. So I was really impressed with his heart after round 4. He tried to pressure Valdez, back him up, give the fans a good fight. So, in my opinion, I think that Burchell has a lot of heart, very, very much impressive heart and tenacity, especially after those 2 knockdowns, to still continue to want to fight. Definitely, he has a champion's heart. But I also think that the trainer was responsible for protecting him and just throwing in the towel and saying no. But I don't think that's how they do things in Mexico. I think they're just like, no, we're just going to keep going.
This is Dan. This is Dan here, Francis. Burchell was actually the favorite. He went in 36. Yeah. He was 36-2 with 33 knockouts. He rattled off win after win, and of course Valdez was 28-0 with 22 knockouts going into it. He vacated the featherweight title, step up in weight, and to become a 2-division champion. So it would look like he would try to do this with speed and defense, and of course that left hook is unbelievable.
That was unbelievable. Yeah, I was actually expecting a better performance for Burchell, because if you look at his record, it's just all knockouts. Yeah. All the way back to 2016. So I expected more of a dominant performance from Burchell, but as Jerry stated, dehydration maybe had a lot to do with that performance. And I thought that Oscar Valdez, he also stepped it up defensively and with the counterpunching and just being more aggressive at the same time. He looked like a different Oscar Valdez even from his previous fight, and he had a good strategy coming into this fight.
What was the term that they used? I can't remember, and I didn't write it down. What was the term they used? When they talk about, was it weight? It was something, because he lost the weight and then he had to, try to gain it all back after the weigh-in. And I forget the term that Timothy Bradley and those guys were saying. But do you know that term that they were saying as far as, what his issues were, having to drop weight and then try to regain it all, within a 24-hour period?
I'm just a bigger issue, but that didn't look like the same Miguel Burchell that I had seen in other performances, so that could definitely be a factor. Yeah,
we're on with Francis Cruz of ForBoxingNews.com, the president and founder. As far as Oscar Valdez is concerned, of course, congratulations to him, the now new WBC Junior Lightweight World Champion. Why was he getting so much backlash and so much negativity heading into this fight? What was the reason behind? Because everyone was against him, and I commend him, and I'm proud of him for his post-fight comments, and say, hey, no matter what people say about you, no matter what people think about you, don't listen to them. If you believe in yourself and you want it, work hard, fight hard, and you can accomplish your dream and your goal. Why was so much backlash against this kid?
I think that Oscar Valdez had a strong amateur style when he started out as a professional fighter. So at that time, all fans had their eyes on Oscar Valdez. He was just so fast, so quick, incredible footwork, nice power. He was just so elusive in the ring. But sometime around 2017, his fighting style really changed. Mm-hmm. I'd say he became more of a brawler, more of a toe-to-toe fighter, and he went up against opposition that many would consider subpar, like not great opposition, not the best, and then still struggled to get the knockout, really finished the fight with decision wins, which people weren't really impressed with. They thought, he doesn't really have that much power because he can't knock out guys that really aren't that good. And we've seen him look so vulnerable in other fights, with fighters that, again, weren't considered the best, getting a broken jaw and just dealing with all of these injuries as a result of his fighting style changing, and then wanting to go up against, tougher opposition. People thought, he's not going to have what it takes because he's fading. He's more open, more vulnerable for punches. He lunges in with that big left hook. And he just didn't look as impressive for a while. I think that's what fans really thought, that Valdez's days were numbered, and that this fight would be a true test to see just how far his career would go in boxing. And I think that Burchell obviously was the favorite, but as we saw, he was the one that actually maybe kind of faded here in his career. So yeah, I think that's really the story behind Oscar Valdez, and that over the last few years, people have kind of speculated whether or not he's really that good anymore. That he started out really strong, but the fireworks just sort of diminished and faded with him. But last night, that was definitely a reawakening for a lot of fans. It was a redeeming win, and it was impressive. That's definitely a candidate for knockout of the year.
It is. Burchell was taken to the hospital because he was unconscious, and he did get released. But he went to the hospital for observation. They did a CT scan, and it came back clean. So the punch literally knocked him out.
It was scary because he was laid out and he wasn't moving, right, Francis?
He was not moving. And there were a few minutes I thought that went by, and he just was laying there on the canvas. But I thought that they saw some signs of movement. So initially, I thought, "Oh my goodness, this is a terrible outcome."
Yeah, it brought back shades for me, Ray Boom Boom Mancini when he knocked out Duk Koo Kim, and we know what happened there. So it was a little bit, it was devastating. And like you said, the way that he fell like a ton of bricks and face first, and he was laying there not moving at all. So it was congratulations and good job by the paramedics and the trainers that are on hand to assist him, the medical assistants. And you're right, they got him on a stretcher, got him to the hospital, and thank God that he's okay. Before we let you go, we'd always appreciate you joining us on the Rewind Sports 60. Definitely want you to stay safe and warm for sure. But got to ask you about this Conor McGregor guy. After this guy got his big payday fighting Floyd Mayweather, is he just just out there hey, it's more entertainment than action? Because he lost his last bout. What's going on with this cat?
I think so. Last I heard, he was supposed to do an exhibition bout with Manny Pacquiao, and that kind of got swept under the rug there. So I think he's definitely into this career transition for the money. He probably makes more money doing these exhibition bouts than fighting with the UFC. Coming into celebrity boxing, that was just such a surprise, and he's supposed to be facing Aaron Carter. It's really surprising to see MMA fighters make more of a transition into exhibition bouts, and then to see celebrities or retired athletes doing the same thing. But it's caused such a wave in boxing. It's generated so much attention. So I actually don't mind it. I think a lot of people think they're not serious fights, and that may be true, but they generate a lot of attention. And if it's entertaining to the public, then why not, right? So. Yeah, Conor McGregor. Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
he did lose his last bout, but wow, I'm so surprised with all of the speculation of him coming to more into exhibition fighting and celebrity boxing.
Well, I commend the guy because he took his profession to the next level. He teamed up with Floyd Mayweather, and now he got the big payday, and he's a big time. Hey, real quick, you're big time too, Francis Cruz. But I got some breaking news for you. You ready?
Sure.
Francis, guess what?
What?
I'm back I'm not literally back in the ring, but I started boxing training again.
Oh, nice!
Hey, Francis, I'm over at I'm over at a gym on the. A good friend, Fred Okendo, got me started, and I'm working with two young men, Renard Willis and Jordan, two young guys, and they're up and comers in the boxing world. But they're working me out, and I've been at it for 2-3 weeks now, Francis. So I'm yeah, and I thought about you. I said I may have to go work out with Francis at her gym as well. But I'm getting the old body into shape, and I'm trying to get that beach look for the summer, Francis Cruz.
Oh my goodness! Well, you're starting nice and early. I'm so glad that you've taken up boxing again.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about that before. I hope you're really enjoying it. Fred's such a great guy. I'm sure the workouts have been grueling and fun at the same time.
Oh, they've been kicking my butt, but it's a good kick in the butt. Hey, Francis.
Good.
Thank you. It's the fastest hour in sports conversation. We appreciate you. Real quick in 10 seconds, if people want to find you, how do they find the beautiful, the outstanding, fabulous Francis Cruz?
Oh, you can check me out at 4boxingnews.com. That's the number 4boxingnews.com, or on Twitter at 4boxingnews.
Francis, thank you so much. We'll talk to you down the stretch. Be safe.
Definitely. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the fastest hour in sports conversation. Yours truly, Jerry Riles, along with the marvelous one. Marvelous. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Drive safe.
Yeah.
Stay warm. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care.
Devin Tingle, outstanding job. Ladies and gentlemen, stay safe. Stay warm. We'll talk to you next week.
The Rewind Sports 60.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Sports Medicine Update, a weekly podcast with yours truly, Jerry Riles, and the Honorable Dr. Chad Padromas. Doctor, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jerry. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there. Here in the Chicagoland area, the temperatures are plummeting. We were in single digits, well, actually double digits in the teens the past couple of days. This weekend, Valentine's Day weekend, we are plummeting down in the single digits and below. Oh my, I even hate to think about it, but under zero. Wind chill expected to be 30 to 50 degrees below zero with the wind chill factor, give or take here and there. So despite that, we're hanging in there and we're staying strong, and we're Chicago strong for sure, Doc.
Yeah, you know, we're down here in Florida. Team Patients gave actually a lecture outside yesterday.
Wow.
And it's, well, you know, weather's nice, but hey, I think cold weather makes you tough, right? So I'll be back in a day or two.
Yeah. Don't rub it in being down there in Florida. I wish I was down there. They got the Daytona 500 this weekend, so that's a big monumental event taking place. Florida is just a great place to be, and people are certainly getting out and enjoying themselves. But here, of course, in the Windy City and all across, I believe, somewhere between 20, 25 states, that northeast storm has just really hit the Northeast and the Midwest very, very hard. I believe on the New York area, they've had somewhere between 2 to 3 feet of snow. And again, we talked about the temperatures plummeting. And, of course, we love the city of Chicago because we say the summer, however long it is, from June to August, whatever the case may be, it's beautiful. But to appreciate it and to enjoy the weather here in Chicago, or the city in Chicago, you have to be able to endure the cold and the snow. And many of us who've grown up and lived in this beautiful city of Chicago, we know exactly what that means. And that's one thing I wanted to touch base with you on and talk about with this podcast is that, we're in the meat of winter. And that's the mid-February, and the temperatures are very, very challenging. And the snow, of course, you have to dig out from underneath it, which means, and of course, limited daylight time because of shorter days. But I wanted to ask you, Doctor, the mental state of people living, in the Midwest and in the East Coast, having to deal with winter. Your thoughts and your experience on how people can prevent the, getting depressed and the cabin fever and trying to battle through it and overcome it from a mental standpoint.
I think that the one overriding important thing to do is to exercise. Exercise does just a variety of things that are very good. It makes endorphins. It's good for your mental state. It builds telomeres, which help you live longer. It's just good for you on a number of fronts. And so I will tell you, when you talk about exercise, people talk about just being mobile, being active, walking around. That's true. However, I'm a big believer in, health permitting, of course, exercise that's a little more stressful. The fact is that you have to have overload to increase your exercise capacity. And, there's aerobic and anaerobic. And, when I was growing up, when they started talking about health benefits, it was all about aerobic, getting your heart rate up, which is extremely important. But we now know that anaerobic strength training is equally as important. So I tell all my patients, and I do this myself, that you should exercise 6 days a week. 3 days a week on alternating days, do something aerobic. 3 days a week on alternating days, do strength training. We actually, on our website, ismoc.net, there's a link that says the ISMOC workout. And there are 5 exercises you can do for your upper body. And this is meant to be a joint-friendly, a shoulder-friendly workout, actually. So there's videos, there's descriptions, and it's what I do myself. If you do these 5 exercises, 3 sets of each, 10 reps first set, 30 reps second set, 20 reps third set, takes 20 minutes, you'll be in great shape. And then something aerobic the other day. So I think exercise above all else. So to be clear, walking around, sure, but where are you going to walk in the winter, right? And I have a standing desk. I like that better than sitting. But I mean working out where you're huffing and puffing and straining and really working hard. Because if you don't overload, you don't get stronger. And the act of making new muscle tissue makes you healthier. The same is true for aerobic exercise. And, I'll get back to that in a minute. The corollary to that is diet. People tend to eat more when it's cold. We all tend to eat no matter what, right? But sometimes if you're feeling bad, eating is pleasurable, so people eat for pleasure. And I'll just tell you, I tell all my patients, and I do it myself. Everybody, as a society, we're putting on weight. We put on a lot of weight, right? So the one thing that I think you've got to do above all else is just weigh yourself every day. And maybe that seems offensive to people. I don't know, but you have to figure out what you want to weigh yourself every day. Deny yourself food to the extent that you need to do it. Not just eat healthy. Eating healthy is great, but you just got to eat not that much. So here's the thing. The 2 things that make people sick and unhealthy and lacking energy are being overweight and being under-exercised. So I think in the winter, it's true year-round, but, in a warm climate, Florida, people ride bikes year-round, they take long walks. Well, not happening in Chicago. And in fact, you take long walks in Chicago, for older people in particular, they fall and break things. It's a cool climate, right? So I think you have to focus and work hard to exercise in a meaningful, sort of stressful way, 6 days a week. And I think you have to weigh yourself. And if you gain a pound today, tomorrow eat a lot less and lose it.
That's great advice, Doctor. But for those of us who work out regularly, I think we understand you have to continue the process and maybe work, as you stated, a little bit more, a little bit harder, because you're indoors and because you don't have the freedom to get out and walk and do those sorts of things. But what about those individuals, Doc, who may not work out at all? And if they do work out, maybe it's to a bare minimum, but now they find themselves being that couch potato, for instance, watching the Super Bowl last week, and congratulations to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on bringing on the trophy. That's an incredible story in its own right. But all the commercials, whether it's Doritos or whatever the case may be, the couch potato is sitting there and he's munching and he's jumping, and before you know it, you talk about the freshman 15. You got the winner, 15, 20 as well. How do you motivate those individuals to get off the couch and do some sort of exercise to better themselves, now and in the future?
So the answer is we as a society are not motivated. And we as a society are getting sicker and sicker because we're not motivated. And nobody has figured out a way to motivate people, unfortunately. And, you brought up TV. I'll just tell you, so you actually burn less calories. Your metabolism is actually slower sitting and watching TV than sleeping. Isn't that interesting? So as far as I'm concerned, I think the worst thing you can do is watch TV. I think screens, watching TV, there's almost nothing worse. I mean, being on the screen to write something or do something useful is one thing, but it's bad for two reasons. Number one, you don't burn any calories. You're in this sort of vegetative state. Number two, it's been shown, just as you said, when you're sitting watching TV, you want to eat. So it's a double whammy. So the best thing you can do, as far as I'm concerned, is just turn the thing off. Just don't watch it. Now, that's particularly tough because of the pandemic. People are inside. They have nothing else to do. But I will tell you, I can't think of anything less useful than watching TV in general. So, read a book, play cards, anything, But I think, forcing yourself to exercise more, forcing yourself to always be kind of hungry, because if you're not always kind of hungry, you're just going to gain weight. But, forcing yourself to not eat, forcing yourself to not watch TV, and forcing yourself to exercise, I think are the three most useful things that you could possibly do. And, to get back to the exercise thing a little too, I mentioned anaerobic exercise, lifting weights, been found to be as health-giving as aerobic, but that aerobic, getting your heart rate up and, really getting your heart rate up. So we talk to our patients about 15-minute workouts on an elliptical or a bike or whatever, where you get a heart rate monitor and you get your heart rate up high. Now, talk to your doctor, of course, but the general formula for aerobic exercise for maximum heart rate is 220 minus your age. So if you're 50, your maximum heart rate is something like 170. And getting your heart rate up to 80% of 170 for a 50-year-old would be like 120 something. So getting it that high, or even much higher, getting your heart rate up where you're out of breath and you feel like you can't stand it, and if you don't do that, you don't really improve your aerobic capacity. And getting on an elliptical or a bike for 45 minutes and reading a book is not very different than taking a long walk. And it's much better than not doing it at all. But an entirely different physiologic effect from pushing yourself and getting your heart rate way up high and keeping it way up high, uncomfortably high. See, all of this stuff, you don't get useful workouts unless you're uncomfortable. You've got to be straining to push weights. You've got to be out of breath and feeling like you can't go on anymore aerobically, because our bodies are programmed for energy conservation. We're programmed for scarcity, right? We're not programmed for plenty. And so what's messing us up so much is, for the first time in the history of the world, in Western society, we have plenty. And we're just not genetically adapted to it. We're genetically adapted to going through long winters with no food, and how do you conserve energy? So that's what we do. And so when we're not in that situation, it's the reverse. And the triple whammy for TV, I mentioned the fact that your metabolism's lower, that you feel like eating. And then, as you said, all the commercials are for things to eat, Right. It just doesn't get any worse. So then you sit there and you eat all this high energy food, and our bodies are programmed to eat it. So you really have to get to a point where you look on food as sort of the enemy, because, and I understand there are people that are never hungry and they don't gain weight, but there aren't too many of those people around. Most of the rest of us, you've really gotta, you've really gotta work at it. So I think that particularly through the winter, when we're shut in, it's got to be kind of preoccupation. The payoff, it feel good. Nothing makes you feel worse than being heavy. And part of the reason for that too is that if people that are heavy in general are sick. And I'd like to say, I'm not saying this is intentional, But our economy, I think, would collapse if people lost weight, because, you know, probably majority of the diseases that people get, not maybe not a majority, but an awful lot are related to being heavy. So then when you're heavy, you get high blood pressure and diabetes. And I'm not telling you anything we haven't discussed before and that you don't know. But then you take medications. The medications have side effects, and you just can't get out from under it.
The use of coffee, drinking, and caffeine.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about decaf coffee is that the chemicals that they use to decaffeinate the coffee, I think, are not benign. So I don't drink decaf coffee often just for that reason. As to your other point, you know what happens is there are all these associative stories that say, well, drinking coffee does this and it's good for you, and does this and it's bad for you. And the truth of the matter is, and I think people have kind of picked up on this from this point, is there are a lot of sort of non-significant associations. So there's a lot of, how shall I say, there's a lot of demand for health information in publications and articles and whatnot. And there isn't a big supply of things that are really meaningful. So I think, you know, I look at these things. I don't look at them actually as much as I used to, because you can't, it becomes impossible to live your life based on these kinds of articles, because they're contradictory. They're all over the map. They usually have kind of non-significant associations. And, you know, and sometimes they turn out to be horribly wrong. We talked about this before, the whole carb thing when I was growing up. You know, fat's evil and carbs are good, and it's just not true. So what I'm saying is, I think there's an old Greek saying, forgive me, pan metron ariston, means moderation in all things, right?
Right.
So I think if you moderate what you eat, if you use common sense, and I'll tell you something else. This is kind of the opposite of what you may hear, but how much you eat, I think it's far more important than what you eat. I mean, you know, McDonald's hamburgers in a third world country are fantastic. Protein, calories, right? You know?
Right.
So you can eat McDonald's hamburgers every day if you don't eat too many of them. So if you're not, see, our bodies are omnivores. Our bodies are geared to picking nutrients out of food.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just eat very little and less as you get older, and you're not heavy, what you eat doesn't matter as much. You know, and there's people all over the world. You kind of look at this, like, we're big on plant-based diets, and I do. I just eat lean meat and vegetables, you know. But there are populations in the world. The Maasai in Africa, you know, live on blood and milk. The Inuits up north live on blubber and meat, right? You know, and they do fine. The key is, though, whatever you're eating, just don't eat very much of it.
Right. No, my good doctor, and he keeps.
And by the way, let me just add this.
Yes, sir.
Is there are just a few things out there, talking about food and coffee, there's just a few things out there that are really important, written in stone, that we know. The most important is what I said, just eating less of things. Just not being heavy, you know, keeping your BMI below 25, for sure. The other thing, though, is processed food. There is no question that processed and smoked food do bad things, carcinogenic, everything else. So beyond that, whether you drink a little more coffee, a little less, whatever, I think that's kind of nibbling around the edges, pardon the, you know, the allegory. But processed food is certainly bad.
No, you hit it right there. That's exactly right. And I hope that more people will learn more about their diets and get educated on that, and definitely continue to work and get the exercise in, and whatever they intake. I agree with you, and my doctor told me the same thing years ago. It's all in moderation, and as long as you take the necessary steps and approach to, you know, trying to better yourself overall, mentally and physically, I think longevity is a part of your life and your lifestyle, and you can live the ripe old age of, who knows, whatever the case may be. But Doc, thank you so very much. If anyone wants to find out more information or get a hold of you, what are the digits? How do they find you?
So our phone number is 847-699-6810. We've got a great staff. We're always willing to help. And, you know, Jerry, I know we're kind of done, but let me just add one other thing. You made a very important statement early on about how can you motivate people. What I would tell you is if you've got an older family member kind of shut in, tell them, motivate them. You know, you might be a young, healthy, athletic person, but talk to them, encourage them, tell them how important this is.
No, I agree. That's great advice, and we need to. It starts with one, and you continue to build by passing along the information. Dr. Chapter, Dromas, thank you so very much. We look forward to seeing you during the week, and definitely look forward to the podcast every week. It's the Sports Medicine Update, the weekly podcast. Yours truly, Jerry Riles, and the Honorable Dr. Chad Fedorowicz. Doc, take care, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Thank you, Jerry. You too.